Hello everyone, my name is Phawx. This is going to be my review on Anbernic's latest device, the RG351MP, the Metal Pro. Thank you very much to Anbernic for sending this out to me for review. Again, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't have these devices to review as early as I would have. Very quickly, let's go ahead and take a look at this. Once again, we are taking a look at the Rockchip 3326 device. This baby can fit into so many handhelds. This is the tail end of handhelds that will be using that particular chipset. We really are looking at a bunch of new handhelds that are coming on the market very soon. So this is going to be a kind of swan song for the Rockchip. And I've been using this device for about a day now, so this is a completely fake and artificial unboxing as I've been using it for a while. Before we get too far into this, I want to just kind of go over the quality of this particular device. Typically, when I think about premiumness, it's always not, now even the 351p. I find the 351p to be actually a very well designed machine. All the little features about it, even how the button has a recess in there, I find the 351p to be pretty much the pinnacle of design. However, it is a 3x2 display, so it's more suited for GBA as opposed to this 4x3 display, which is better for consoles. Now, I wish that this device came out first before the 351V did. If you just take a look at the size of these devices, the 351V dwarfs it. Dwarfs it. It's larger and not as pocketable because of this hump that's here. So if we even put these together like side by side, right? If we just not scratch the screen, there is significantly more 351V, yet we have mono speaker and one analog stick, whereas this has stereo speakers, which we'll get onto in a moment, and dual analogs. So you get more in less space with this design. And it's not like Anbernic didn't already have this design because the 350M already existed, and these guys are relatively the same here. So I don't know why this particular model took so long to come out. I would have preferred this model to come out before the 351V in terms of if you just want to satisfy a form factor, I would go for this as like the tail end of stuff and go for your best design. Again, this is more for console stuff, so more traditional types of console emulation. So overall, this is the better design. However, we don't have Wi-Fi in there. Anbernic really has done a fantastic job and flexing with this anodized metal here. This blue iridescent just looks stellar in person. Hopefully I'm capturing it through my camera. I wish there was a potentiometer here instead of having digital volume buttons, but again, we'll get to that in a second. We have the on-the-go port, 3.5mm audio, and our DC charging port. Full complement of buttons. It's just really, really nicely designed. So compact, really well designed. I wish this had Wi-Fi in it. I would actually rock it more often. The one downside that I feel with metal, especially being in the New York City area, when it gets cold outside, the metal actually gets freezing cold. So using the device in cold weather is prohibitive. It's not the best. But overall, you can see Anbernic just flexing here. I do apologize that these screw holes are missing. That's how it arrived to me. Additionally, on the inside, which I'll be showing later, I don't have an EM shield on my device either. That's fine. This device is just for review purposes. I don't really need a pristine version. This is just for testing purposes, which is more than fine for me. Overall, though, we clearly see that Anbernic is flexing on design. Before we get too much further on the buttons and talking about that, let's go further into the unboxing. So the other things that are included in here is the tempered glass protector, which also came with the 351V. And if we take this out, it can seem like an optical illusion a bit. Like if you take a look at the 351MP versus the 351V, it almost looks like the 351V has a larger screen. However, if we just put this on here, we can clearly see that this matches. And then if we put this on here, it's the same size. So these are the same dimensions in terms of bezel and screen size. Also resolution, but they are varying differences in the actual LCD themselves. You're still getting the same real estate from both of these devices. The other thing that's included in here is the pads to apply the tempered glass screen, a charging cable but not a charging port, and then this is the unfortunate bit that I'm glad that they included it. So it's a little 802.11n USB-A Wi-Fi adapter, which you can see right here. And then this connects to USB-C, which you then connect to your OTG, the on-the-go port, and create this absurd stack that you see here. Now, I've gone ahead and already tried playing a game. I signed into RetroAchievements. I played a game. I loaded the game, checked and verified that the RetroAchievements loaded for the game. Then I pulled out the network adapter, got an achievement, and then tried plugging the adapter back in to see if it could remain unlocked and recorded. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So if you're going to be using this device with RetroArch, you're more than likely to avoid frustration, have to keep it in at all times. And it's just really not practical to do that. So unfortunately, because one of the preferred ways that I prefer to play on these retro handhelds, and this is something that I've been talking about even back to 351p. If you go back to my review there, I was big on RetroAchievements back then. I'm still big on RetroAchievements today, because playing with RetroAchievements is going to be cumbersome on this device. It's not going to be for me. However, this type of thing is going to be good for like updates for when devs port to this, and because it's a Rockchip 3326, there's already a lot of work there. ArcOS 1.7 already loads on this, but none of the controller ports work on this. This is a known thing, and I don't anticipate that it's going to be long before that actually starts working. So this particular accessory that they include is going to be for scraping sites to get metadata and box art for games, as well as updating your handheld. But for using NetPlay or RetroAchievements, I really can't fathom that you're going to be using this, just because it's not very practical to have attached. So that's pretty much the end of the unboxing and what's included. Let's go and talk about build quality a little bit more on this device, and we're going to talk about some other features on here before we get into the review proper. So along with the RG351P, they include a 16 gigabyte Toshiba, well, in my case, a Toshiba branded 16 gigabyte system card. I don't know if you're going to have a Toshiba branded microSD card for your system drive, and then a non-branded 64 gigabyte microSD card filled with a bunch of ROMs already from Anbernic. So if there's something that you were looking, if you have difficulty finding ROMs and stuff, that's going to be something that you might want to take a look at, to have something that's already preloaded, and maybe you'll be able to kind of skirt the issue of not being able to find ROMs and depend on whatever's inserted here. Over here we can take a look at the power button. This one thing right here is something I wish that they embellished a little bit more, and I must admit that I am a little spoiled from Anbernic previously, because this is an Anbernic device as well, and this is a 351V, and you can see that there's just a little divot for the power button to sit into, and this one kind of sits out like a sore thumb. I would have preferred this to be recessed so that it wasn't so easy to press or kind of nudge, forcing the system into sleep mode. Sleep mode does work, it's fine. It's just that I wish that this had a recess like the 351P. I know Anbernic can do it because I've done it previously, so it's a little bit unfortunate that they didn't. Again, the volume rockers, these are actual digital buttons. This is not my preference either. I do prefer a potentiometer for my analog fidelity in terms of finessing how I want my audio to sound. Speaking of audio, before we start talking about the control inputs, which are very good and typical of Anbernic quality as of late, and I'll have a few comments on that as well as some video to back it up. These stereo speakers, on my particular unit, and I believe on one other unit that I am aware of, there is a fair amount of distortion that happens when you drive these at 100%. I actually had to dial it down to around 70% for the distortion to be lessened. Playing games like Crazy Taxi, it becomes very, very apparent that these are being driven way too hard, and they're just getting blown out. So hopefully in this particular example right here, you'll be able to hear that. Now let's talk about the controls here. The analog sticks, I'm not the biggest fan of these Switch clone sticks. They're okay, but because the target for this particular device is a lot of retro games that don't really feature a lot of analog input, that's not the biggest deal. I'm glad they're here mostly for ports and other particular computer games I would come across where you're going to be using these dual analog sticks. But for the most part, all emulation, you're going to be looking at this D-pad. Now, this D-pad is still a winner. However, just like every Anbernic device that I have, it is constantly this southeast part of the D-pad. So if we take a look at these cardinal directions right here, the southeast part of it does need to get broken in. And I know it can get broken in because I've broken in my 351P. So it does require a little bit of use. It's not terrible. I'm going to show you a little sample right here. So as you can see, it is more than fine for actually using and actually playing fighting games on, which is fantastic. It's just that it does require, at least in this particular corner, the southeast quadrant, that it requires some breaking in. The feel of this D-pad is really top tier, especially for being membrane based. So overall, I can recommend this D-pad. It is fantastic, as well as the face buttons here. The spacing of the buttons is such that when you need to kind of pivot your thumb across them, it's exceedingly easy. The feedback that you get from those membrane buttons are snappy. It feels really good. It is not mushy at all. It's such a sensational set of face buttons and D-pad. Without a doubt, the reason that people are going to be mostly interested on the RG351MP is the screen itself. The 3.5-inch 640 by 40 IPS screen is absolutely stunning. The viewing angles as well are crazy good. I realize that no one should really be looking at it from an obtuse, like an extreme obtuse angle, but even looking through my camera in this particular angle, you can see the clarity and color reproduction is still fantastic, even at stupid obtuse angles. It's really just a fantastic display, and arguably the system that it emulates targets this resolution and aspect ratio so nice that overall it's just a pleasure to actually play on. I just really can't say enough good things about the screen. Alrighty, so this is pretty much the tail end of this quick look of the RG351MP. We're going to start looking into games running on the device itself. Again, we're going to be taking a look at stock firmware. Custom firmware is going to help you get a little bit more mileage out of this particular console, but with the Rockchip 3326, you should be mindful that Dreamcast of the 6th generation of consoles is the last stop of consoles that you'll be able to have playing on this device, and even then, many Dreamcast games won't run very well at all. The 5th generation of consoles is really where this is going to be ending out. Some N64 games won't run very well, some PlayStation games won't run very well. There'll be a few games like on Saturn that are not going to run well on this particular device. So you're going to have a little bit of hit and miss on the 5th generation. For the most part, 4th generation is really where this device is going to shine, and it's going to shine well on this particular display. That's pretty much the end of this before we take a look at samples and then the conclusion of my video. Alright, now for the conclusion of my review. This device is something I find to be a juxtaposition of where it finds itself in the market today. New devices are rapidly approaching on the horizon that will easily challenge the performance of this device, and it also lacks some features from Anbernic's previous offerings, specifically internal Wi-Fi. Its strengths pull from Anbernic's fantastic 350M design, where the amount of buttons combined with the 3.5-inch 640x480 display make it one of the most compact portable devices with a screen this size. Combined with the quality materials that Anbernic has gone with the 350MP, it's easy to see why someone would find the 351MP appealing. The bottom line is this: if you really like how the 351MP looks and you don't care about RetroAchievements or NetPlay, then it's very easy to recommend this device. We can all but guarantee that there will be great third-party custom firmware support to take this device to the next level, just because of how mature custom firmware for the RK3326 SoC exists today. The downsides for me is the stereo speakers have a propensity to get blown out, which requires that you lower the volume. Not having Wi-Fi is a hard out for me, just because of how much I enjoy RetroAchievements. There are some fit and finish issues with the anodized case where you can see some scratching already, so you should try to treat this device with care. Additionally, some features that existed on the RG351P, like the recessed power button or the potentiometer, are completely absent on the 351MP. I mean, the positives are that it's an extremely mature platform contained in a super compact yet extremely capable handheld that remains pocketable and stylish. The best feature is undoubtedly the D-pad and face buttons and screen, which makes using the device an absolute pleasure. It's like the RG351MP is like a Rolls Royce that doesn't have any cup holders. It's this exquisite premium experience that lacks some basic features that other devices on the market have. If that's what you want, yeah, I can recommend it. But my personal recommendation would be to wait for the next generation of handhelds coming soon. As always, guys, thank you for your time, and thanks for watching.